Hey everyone, welcome back to Kubrick Corner with me, Sean Wilson. There's a new film that's been released onto Amazon Prime, How to Build a Girl. You may have heard about it, starring Beanie Feldstein from Booksmart and Ladybird as essentially the surrogate for writer Caitlin Moran, who adapts her own memoir of the same name. Set in the 1990s, initially in Wolverhampton in the UK. Beanie Feldstein is Johanna, who is a bored, disaffected Midlands teenager who dreams of becoming a writer. She then applies to become a rock critic in London, and she reinvents herself as this flame-haired, top-hatted character called Dolly Wilde, who is at odds with her humdrum working class roots, particularly her parents, played by Paddy Considine and Sarah Soleimani. And it's an interesting thing. This film has bounced around the release schedule quite extensively. It was meant to get a theatrical release in the UK, at least, back in July. Obviously, owing to the coronavirus pandemic, that has now been massively disrupted. It's now been released onto Amazon Prime, as I said, directed by Koki Gaidrock, sister of Mel Gaidrock. And it's an interesting thing because expectations are a dangerous thing when it comes to reviewing films. I've mentioned this before. The higher your expectations are, the greater the risk that the film will potentially disappoint you. And I've gone through a clutch of watching a clutch of movies recently that I've had variously high and low expectations for. I had to say I thought this was going to be one of the ones that would actually exceed my expectations, because I think Beanie Feldstein is very, very funny. I thought she was brilliant in Booksmart, in particular the idea of the academic teenager who wants to go party wild but yet doesn't quite understand how the world works. You know, not everything can be learned from books, despite the fact that she is aspiring to go to a top class university in America. I thought she was really terrific in that. And lots of very, very talented people involved in this, as I've said, adapted from Caitlin Moran's memoir by Caitlin Moran herself. So I was expecting something sort of sharp and witty, yet also kind of poignant and melancholy. And I kind of hate to say it, the movie didn't really live up to expectations, if I'm being completely honest. The movie certainly didn't make me laugh as much as I expected it would. Certainly, when the comparison I was making when I was watching it in my head was Fighting with My Family, the Stephen Merchant film that was based on the true story of Soraya Jade, aka Paige Bevis, the Norfolk wrestler who went on to become the big WWE star. That was a movie that sort of similarly looked at a humble working class person who then followed her dream, albeit briefly, to go on and essentially make a big name for herself. And you have a similar kind of contrast here, the idea of the humdrum working class roots versus the apparently impossible aspirational dream, and what happens when you make it happen. How does that rub up against the nature of where you come from, the nature of your family, what happens when you seemingly betray your principles in favour of global fame. And I have to say, I thought Fighting with My Family did it better. I thought there was better chemistry between the cast. I thought there was a better sense of location and conviction in the storyline. I had to say, this kind of almost floundered around all over the place. I know Beanie Feldstein has come in for flack with regards to the accent. It's a very hard accent to do. It's not a traditional Brummie accent. It's Wolverhampton. It's subtly different. I mean, a lot of British people would probably struggle to get that right, and it is a wobbly accent, but Beanie Feldstein is likeable despite that. But the problem isn't her. I think the problem is that the script isn't quite as punchy and as witty enough as I would like, and certainly the direction. A lot of the success of comedy comes to do with how the director interprets the material. How does the director make the words on the screenplay fly onto the screen? And I have to say, I thought a lot of this felt rather flat. To me, it kind of flounders from one set piece to another, and I think it ultimately becomes more of a shallow kind of wish fulfillment fantasy than maybe I wanted to be. Certainly, what I wanted was more of a kind of cynical, ever so slightly misanthropic look at what it would take for a young woman to make it in the famously pig-headed, sexist world of 1990s music journalism. And there is an attempt to do that at the end of the movie, but as far as I was concerned, it's almost like the filmmakers were going, right, we've kind of floundered around with this vaguely naive, fairly bland, wishful film movie. All of a sudden, we now have to crowbar 15 minutes of darker subtext at the end, and the film does go dark. But the problem is, when a film does that in its final reel, it has to earn the right to do that. You can't just go from 90 minutes of fluff into 15 minutes of more hard-hitting material. Those two things have to kind of be threaded around each other from the start, with, as I said, with a sense of authenticity and conviction, which is what I think Fighting With My Family did a lot better. Not that I'm here to review that film. So I have to say, again, expectations are a dangerous thing. I was expecting more from this. I kind of felt let down by it, despite the undeniably talented people that are involved. I think the best performance in the film is Sarah Soleimani as the mother suffering from postnatal depression, who is kind of exhausted and wrung out and yet sympathetic. I thought, she's not in the film very much, and whenever she turns up, it suggests more depth behind the relatively glib surface. So, relative disappointment, I thought. If you have seen the film, if you have seen How to Build a Girl, drop me a comment here at Kubrick Corner, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.